They thought she was weak, until she took down an entire threat alone. They laughed at her. To them, the new recruit was a nobody too quiet, too ordinary, too easy to ignore. In a military unit driven by bravado, her silence made her invisible. But when chaos struck and everything began to fall apart, she stepped up and everything changed. The recruit they underestimated wasn't just another face in the crowd. She had a secret identity no one saw, coming a highly trained operative with elite skills that silenced every voice that ever doubted her. Before we continue, drop a comment where in the world are you watching from. We'd love to see how far this story reaches. And don't forget to hit subscribe, because this story is just getting started. The sun burned mercilessly over the Nevada desert as a fresh group of recruits marched into the high-security tactical training compound. Among them was Alara, a slender young woman in her early 30s, her eyes shadowed beneath the brim of her cap. She barely spoke, never raised her voice, and kept to herself, which only made her stand out more among the boisterous, battle-hardened trainees. "She won't survive the week," one of them snorted. "Looks like she wandered in from a yoga retreat." To the rest of the unit, Alara was a ghost, silent, unimpressive, easy to ignore. She never offered opinions, never challenged anyone, and took on every menial task without a word. The louder voices in the group were quick to size her up, just another civilian-turned-soldier trying to play tough. But they didn't know what she'd lived through, or why she was really here. She wasn't chasing glory. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She had a reason for returning to this life, a reason buried deep in classified files and sealed missions. And though they didn't see it yet, there would come a moment when silence would speak louder than arrogance, and Alara would become unforgettable. For weeks, Alara had endured the same routine early morning drills, grueling obstacle courses, weapons simulations, and relentless jabs from the other recruits. "Careful. Alara." One of them laughed, watching her carry ammo crates across the yard. Wouldn't want those little arms to snap. She never flinched, never snapped back. The more they mocked, the quieter she became, and the quieter she became, the more they dismissed her until she was practically invisible. Staff Sergeant Reeves, a no-nonsense veteran with a booming voice, barely acknowledged her existence. He gave the critical tasks to the loudest in the room, the ones who boasted of past deployments or family legacies in the military. Alara was always assigned grunt work cleaning weapons, monitoring equipment, folding cots. But things began to shift during week 4 of the program. The team had been briefed on a classified, full-scale crisis simulation. A 12-hour live field exercise meant to test everything from tactical communication to real-time threat assessment. It was considered the most brutal phase of training. The exercise would simulate a hostile infiltration at the base's southern perimeter, including planted hostiles, system failure, and civilian hostages. The morning of the simulation, the unit buzzed with excitement. "This is where we show who's got it," said Jackson, the self-appointed alpha of the group. As the scenario began, the base's perimeter alarms blared, sirens howled, lights flickered, doors locked down. The recruits scattered into their assigned teams, shouting over comms and scrambling for gear. And then chaos truly hit. The entire comms grid failed. Their weapons jammed part of the simulation. Several team leads panicked. The tactical plan they had rehearsed fell apart in minutes. Fake hostiles began to take out recruits one by one. Even Jackson, who bragged endlessly about his tactical instincts, froze under pressure when faced with a mock hostage situation inside the control room. Reeves, watching silently from the shadows as the chaos unfolded, looked ready to shut down the exercise until something unexpected happened. Alara stepped forward. Calmly, she reached over Jackson's shoulder, examined the tactical map, and rerouted the team through a hidden tunnel beneath the west wall, one no one else had remembered. "Move 5 clicks north. Avoid the breach line. They're corralling you," she said, her voice low but certain. The others hesitated. "What the hell does she know?" one recruit asked. But Reeves didn't say a word. He watched her. Within minutes, Ilara coordinated a new strategy using hand signals, covert positioning, and silent takedown tactics that weren't part of the standard curriculum. She executed a precision maneuver that rescued the hostages, neutralized all mock threats, and rebooted the central system. In under 17 minutes. When the simulation ended, alarms stopped. The lights flicked back to normal. "Silence!" Reeves stepped forward, slow clapping. "You," he said, locking eyes with Ilara. "Where the hell did you learn that?" She didn't answer. But the others stared at her like she was a ghost. Not the kind you ignore, but the kind that haunts you because you know you misjudged someone terribly. Jackson, face pale, avoided her gaze entirely. Later that evening, in the debriefing room, Reeves slammed a folder onto the table. A thick black stamp on the front read, "Classified. Eyes only." "I pulled your file," he said. "Didn't believe it when I saw it. Ilara Wynn, former Omega Unit operative, intelligence recovery, silent recon, black site extractions, 8 confirmed deployments, 2 commendations. Name redacted for a reason." The room went still. Someone whispered, "She was one of them." No one laughed anymore. That night, the base was unusually quiet. The air had shifted. No one dared joke around Ilara anymore. Whispers filled the barracks, speculation, awe, even fear. Some recruits couldn't decide if they respected her or resented her. Jackson avoided eye contact entirely. Ilara said nothing. She never did. She simply returned to her bunk, folded her blanket with military precision, and sat in silence. But the silence didn't last long. At 02:47 a.m., a real emergency alarm pierced the still night, sharper, louder, urgent. Not a drill. The barracks lit up, red. Doors slammed open. Emergency lights flickered as a panicked voice crackled over the loudspeaker. "Perimeter breach. Sector Echo. Unauthorized incursion. All active units on alert. This is not a simulation." Chaos erupted. Recruits stumbled out of bed, confused, half-dressed, some still believing it was a test. But Ilara knew better. She was already geared up. Boots laced, vest on, eyes laser-focused. She moved with eerie calm as others scrambled. Staff Sergeant Reeves barked orders over comms, trying to assemble control. Suddenly gunfire, real gunfire, not blanks. That was the moment reality slapped everyone in the face. A rogue paramilitary group later identified as ex-contractors turned mercenaries had infiltrated Blackridge, targeting the base's underground intel vault. They knew where to go. This wasn't a random attack. They had blueprints. And someone on the inside? While the official soldiers and trainers moved to secure the perimeter, the recruits, technically not even full soldiers yet, were ordered to remain locked in the holding bunker. But fate had other plans. Mid-lockdown, an explosion ripped through the north wall, blowing out the generators and crashing the auto-lock doors. A cloud of dust and flame threw everyone to the ground. When the smoke cleared, 2 things were obvious. The holding bunker was now wide open. The attackers were inside the facility. Panic spread. Most recruits ducked and ran. But Ilara stood still. Then she moved. With surgical precision, she grabbed a disoriented Jackson by the collar and dragged him behind a steel beam. "They're sweeping the hallway. If you move now, you're done." He blinked. "How do you know?" But Ilara was already gone. She moved like shadow and thunder, no hesitation, no wasted motion. With only a utility blade and 2 confiscated sidearms, she weaved through the dark corridors, disabling 2 mercs with brutal efficiency. Her strikes were silent: deadly throat, temple, spinal lock. Security cams would later show a blur moving faster than trained guards. Meanwhile, Reeves's comms were down, and his team pinned. He was outnumbered, trapped in the central tower with 2 wounded cadets and no visibility. They'd breached the vault door. Then, over the emergency comms, a faint voice. "Stand by, Sergeant. I'm 5 minutes out." "Who the hell is—" Wynne. It was the first time Reeves had heard her say her last name. It sent a chill down his spine. Exactly 5 minutes later, Ilara crashed through the upper maintenance shaft, dropped behind enemy lines, and unleashed hell. Flashbang, takedown, elbow to throat, knee to chest, sweep, disarm, shoot. 3 hostiles down before anyone blinked. She moved like someone who'd done this too many times and survived every time. The last attacker held a cadet at gunpoint, shaking, desperate. Ilara didn't yell. She didn't negotiate. She looked him dead in the eyes and said one word: "Run." He didn't, so she fired. Clean shot. Right shoulder. Non-lethal. The cadet collapsed into Reeves's arms. The room was clear. When backup finally arrived, it was over. Not thanks to command, not thanks to the so-called top recruits, thanks to the ghost no one had taken seriously. Later, as the base underwent lockdown and investigation, rumors spread faster than official briefings. She was trained by a black ops unit. Right, did you see how she moved? She saved us all, and didn't even blink. But Ilara didn't stick around for praise. She sat outside the barracks, under the pale desert moon, cleaning her blade in silence. And for the first time, no one dared speak to her unless spoken to. For days after the attack, the atmosphere at Blackridge was unrecognizable. The usual jokes, chest thumping, and trash talk had disappeared. In their place, tension, whispers, and sideways glances all directed at Ilara. No one dared call her yoga girl anymore. No one rolled their eyes when she walked into the mess hall. In fact, no one dared say much of anything around her at all. They didn't know what to say. Some watched her with reverence, others with unease. But everyone knew one thing for certain. She had saved their lives. The footage from the attack had been reviewed by command, then sealed under classified protocol. But not before enough people saw it. Not before word spread like wildfire. She dropped 5 hostiles solo. She moved like she could see in the dark. That wasn't training. That was war. Even Reeves, tough as nails, no-nonsense staff sergeant, had changed. He no longer barked orders at her. Instead, he gave her space, respect, and occasionally, a long look like he was still trying to process what he'd witnessed. But Ilara, she hadn't changed a bit. She still woke up before dawn, still ran drills alone, still folded her blanket with military precision, still never sought attention, never asked for credit. And that, perhaps, unnerved them most. It was Jackson who finally broke the silence. He approached her at the outdoor range one afternoon, holding his rifle awkwardly like it might bite him. "Ilara," he said, clearing his throat, I just wanted to say—" She didn't look up. "You don't have to." "No, I do," he insisted, voice tight with shame. "I was wrong. We all were. You saved our asses. And I treated you like nothing. I'm sorry." She finally looked at him, eyes calm, unreadable. "I didn't come here for your approval, Jackson," she said. "But thank you." He blinked, unsure how to respond, then nodded and walked off, slower than he came. That conversation opened a floodgate. One by one, the others followed. A quiet apology in the hallway, a respectful nod during training, an awkward nice work in the cafeteria. The same mouths that once mocked her were now sealed with humility. But Ilara didn't crave their validation. She'd learned long ago that praise meant little. People admired you after you proved yourself. But the ones worth remembering, they respected you before you had to. Still, something had shifted inside her. Not in the way she viewed herself, but in the way she saw them. She had judged them too. Dismissed them as arrogant, soft, loud. But in that moment of true danger, many of them had fought. Some had frozen. Yes, but others had stood their ground, protected each other, tried despite their fear. They weren't elite, they weren't ready, but they weren't cowards. Now, they were growing, and so was she. One evening, during a tactical planning exercise, Reeves broke protocol. He handed the marker to Ilara in front of the entire squad. "Lead us through the breach scenario," he said. "We'll follow your plan." That moment wasn't dramatic. There was no music swelling, no standing ovation. But the weight of it, undeniable. Ilara took the marker, walked to the board, drew 3 X's, a flank route, a timed breach. She spoke clearly, briefly, strategically, and they listened every single one of them. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. That night, Ilara stood alone outside the barracks, watching the desert stars. She wasn't seeking redemption, or leadership, or admiration. She had come to Blackridge for one reason: to disappear. But fate had other plans. And now, no matter how silent she tried to be, she had a voice in the room. Not by speaking louder, but by proving that sometimes the quietest one is the strongest of all. It started with a sealed envelope. Reeves delivered it himself, his expression unreadable as he placed the heavy folder on Ilara's bunk. "You're being requested," he said quietly. "This comes from above." Way above. Ilara didn't answer. She simply stared at the file thicker than the others, sealed in black, with no visible insignia except a coded stamp in the upper corner. It was Omega Protocol. Only a few people on Earth knew what that meant. She opened the folder alone, behind closed doors. Inside a single-page briefing, 2 satellite images, and a mission tag. Operation Shadow Vein. Objective: covert retrieval of asset codenamed Harbor Location. Classified foreign territory. Status: immediate deployment requested. Field lead required. At the bottom, handwritten in red ink. Only one operative qualified. Clearance: Ilara Wynn. She closed the folder slowly. Her past wasn't behind her after all. It had just been waiting. Later that evening, Ilara sat across from Reeves in the command office. The door was shut. The room was dim, filled with the hum of a single overhead fan. "You're not obligated to take it," Reeves said. "You've earned the right to choose." Ilara's voice was quiet. "It's not about choice. It's about responsibility." Reeves nodded, tapping the folder. "They want you back in the field, leading a shadow unit again. Same structure, same stakes, no backup, no glory." "I know. I'd ask if you're ready, but hell, you never stopped being ready." She gave him a half smile, the closest she'd come to showing emotion in weeks. "But before you go," he added, leaning forward, "there's something you should know. Your recruits, they petitioned command, asked if you could stay and train the next cycle." Ilara's expression shifted, a flicker of something shock, maybe even warmth. "They respect you, Ilara," Reeves continued. "They want to learn from you. That means something." She looked away, processing that. For years, her life had been defined by secrets, shadows, and survival. Now, for the first time, people were choosing to follow her not because they had to, but because they believed in her. But the mission, it was bigger than her. Later that night, as the rest of the base slept, Ilara walked the perimeter alone. The desert wind tugged at her jacket. Every step was a memory, each grain of sand a whisper from the past. She paused beneath the watchtower, staring out into the dark. The easy path was to stay. She could train recruits, build something lasting, fade into the background on her own terms. But she didn't come here to be comfortable. She came to prepare herself for this. At 400, she reported to the extraction pad, dressed in black tactical gear, sidearm holstered, blade sheathed, no insignia, no rank, just purpose. As the chopper descended, its blades slicing the silence, Reeves appeared at her side once more. "They'll miss you, you know." She looked at him. "They'll be fine. You trained them well. You trained them better." A pause, then, "Come back, Elara." She said nothing, just stepped toward the chopper. Before boarding, she turned once, just once, and saw them. Jackson, Reyes, Monroe, even little Carter from Bravo Squad, standing in the shadows, saluting without words. She didn't wave, but her eyes said everything. As the chopper lifted into the pale dawn sky, the desert below faded into gold. And Elara Wynn, once invisible, once ridiculed, disappeared again. But this time, not as a nobody. This time, as the most trusted weapon in the field. The cold returned before the bullets did. High in the mountains of an unnamed region, Elara lay prone on a rooftop under a sheet of artificial snow. Wind howled past her earpiece. Her fingers, despite years of exposure, still ached in the cold. But her focus razor sharp. Down below, through the scope of her rifle, she watched the convoy roll in 3 armored vehicles, 4 hostiles on the ground, and 1 asset inside the middle truck. Harbor. "Stand by for breach," the voice in her comm said. She didn't respond. She never did unless necessary. Words wasted time. One breath, one thought. This used to be everything I was. But now it felt different. The op went clean. 3 minutes in. The convoy was down, the asset secured, and her extraction team moving like ghosts in the snow. Elara didn't hesitate, but she noticed things now she hadn't before. The fear in the hostages' eyes, the youth of the enemies, the silence after the takedown. She didn't question her orders, but the part of her that had trained recruits back at Blackridge, the part that had watched them grow, was still awake. Back at the safe house, the mood was sterile. Clean walls, steel doors, a flickering fluorescent light that hummed like an old secret. Elara sat alone with a cup of water, eyes fixed on the file in her hands. Mission complete. Another victory. But she didn't feel victorious. For years, she'd lived by rules written in the dark strike first. Ask never, vanish always. She had been a ghost, a blade, a tool. But now something had shifted. Blackridge had reminded her of something she'd buried: deep human connection, trust, the possibility of leading instead of executing, teaching, not just eliminating. She thought of Jackson, of Monroe, of Carter's dumb grin when he finally passed his first live-fire drill. She missed them, and more importantly, she believed in them. 1 week later, a second mission arrived. Higher stakes, larger target, no extraction. Elara reviewed the file, sat in silence, and then for the first time in her career, she pushed it away. She walked to the encrypted console, typed a secure code, and opened a private channel back to Blackridge. Reeves answered, groggy-eyed. "Wynn, I have a proposition." "Yes. Go on." 2 days later, she walked into a low-lit briefing room at Langley, clean, cold, clinical. Across the table sat 5 men in suits, and 1 woman with sharp eyes and an intelligence badge. "You're suggesting we reassign you to training command?" one of them asked, clearly baffled. "With your record, You could be running Omega units worldwide. I'm done running, Ilara said. Calm, measured, certain. You have warriors. What you need are leaders. I want to help build them. You're not a teacher, another man scoffed. She leaned forward. I trained the next generation without even trying. Imagine what I can do if I do. Silence. Then the woman spoke. Blackridge is requesting your return. She nodded once. Then we're done here. Back at Blackridge, the wind was just as dry, the sun just as harsh. But now, the air buzzed with something new. Respect. Not fear, not legend, not myth. Earned respect. As Ilara stepped out of the chopper, recruits lined up her recruits. No salute, no ceremony. Just the quiet tension of people meeting their new instructor. She stood tall, dressed in regulation gear, eyes sharp. I'm not here to babysit, she said. I'm not here to entertain. Pause. I'm here to make sure none of you die when it's real. That got their attention. No jokes, no smirks. They listened. And for the first time in years, Ilara Wynn felt not like a ghost, but like a guide. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was leading, and for the first time, she realized something unexpected. She wanted to. The desert wind hadn't changed. Still dry, still relentless. It whipped through the open training grounds of Blackridge as the sun beat down on the backs of the newest recruits green. Wide-eyed, and already regretting signing up. Ilara stood at the edge of the field, arms crossed, watching them fumble through their third attempt at a breach and clear drill. Her expression was unreadable. Behind her, Staff Sergeant Reeves approached slowly. You gonna let 'em figure it out? He asked, or jump in before they blow each other up. Ilara didn't turn. They'll figure it out. Payne's a good teacher. Reeves smirked. Sounds familiar. She finally glanced his way. You once told me silence was a weakness. I was wrong. Ilara's eyes went back to the field. A lot of people were. 6 months had passed since her return. In that time, Blackridge had transformed. The training wasn't just harder, it was smarter. Ilara had overhauled the curriculum herself. Less ego, more strategy, less shouting, more precision. She drilled into them the things that had kept her alive: situational instinct, adaptability, the power of restraint, and most importantly, the strength of listening. It wasn't glamorous. There were no medals, no headlines, but she was shaping something that no battlefield ever could discipline with soul. Word spread. Recruits began requesting to train under her directly, not because of her past, but because of what they saw in her now. Confidence without arrogance, authority without intimidation, power without noise. She'd become the kind of leader she never had. And in doing so, she unlocked something even she hadn't expected. Healing. Through teaching, Ilara began to reclaim the parts of herself that war had buried. Every trainee she mentored reminded her that what she'd been through mattered not because of the pain it caused, but because of the strength it gave her to pass on. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, a small group of recruits stayed behind after drills. They gathered near her quietly, unsure whether they were allowed to speak. Finally, Carter, older now, sharper, stepped forward. Ma'am, he said, we were talking earlier and, we were wondering something. Ilara raised an eyebrow. You're wondering if I smile. Laughter broke the tension, but Carter shook his head. Actually, no. We were wondering if you ever feared anything. Back then, the group went silent. It was a bold question. Ilara looked at them. Really looked. They weren't the same group she'd once seen trip over themselves on day one. They were soldiers now, thinking ones, feeling ones. She nodded slowly. Fear's not weakness, she said. It's fuel. You just have to decide which engine you're feeding, the one that drives you forward or the one that burns you alive. A long pause. Then she added, Yeah. I was afraid. A lot. Still am sometimes. Carter swallowed. But you never showed it. Ilara smiled faintly. That's because I was watching you. That night, in the dim quiet of her quarters, Ilara pinned a new photo to the wall, a group shot of her current trainees, sweaty, dirt-covered, exhausted, but grinning. Underneath it, in simple handwriting, lead them quietly. She had once believed her purpose was to disappear. Then she believed her purpose was to survive. Now, she finally understood. Her purpose was to shape those who would come after. Not every war is fought with bullets. Some are fought with wisdom, and won with legacy. As the lights dimmed across Blackridge, Ilara stood once more beneath the stars. She wasn't a ghost anymore. She was the firelight on the path forward. Ilara's story is a reminder that true strength doesn't always shout, it endures, observes, and rises when the world least expects it. She was ignored, doubted, even mocked, but she never let it define her. Instead, she let her actions speak. When the moment came, she didn't need to prove anything because she already knew who she was. And that's the lesson. You don't need to fit the mold. You don't have to be the loudest to be the most powerful. Your value isn't in how others see you. It's in how you carry yourself when no one is watching. Respect is earned not by demanding it, but by embodying it. If Ilara's story spoke to you, subscribe and hit the bell so you won't miss what's next. Share this with someone who needs quiet strength today. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.